Among the options on the beer wall at Walter's Sports Bar are Annapolis IPA, Green City IPA, Raised by Wolves, and Vienna Lager. Walters is located across the street from Nationals Park.
Everyone is talking about magnesium. It's all you hear about. But why? What do we know about magnesium? Well, magnesium is the number one mineral that 75% of Americans are deficient in. If you are a woman over 35, magnesium will help you rediscover balance, energy, and vitality. Magnesium supports more than 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, including those involved in hormonal balance. From functional medicine doctors to mental well-being and female hormone experts, we all know that magnesium is the one mineral to improve all aspects of well-being and health. But which one? Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, the trusted choice recommended by leading experts with 7 best-absorbed forms of magnesium to ensure your body receives the support it needs for overall well-being. Go to bioptimizers.com/balance today and use code BALANCE10 for 10% off. Support your journey to wellness at bioptimizers.com/balance. Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, your foundation to optimal health and vitality.
Here's Winker. The pitch to Jesse is belted in the air to left field deep. Kelnick going back to the warning track near the wall. Leaps, can't get it. The ball off the wall. Caroming towards straightaway left. Meneses scores. Winker stops at second with a double. Nationals lead 3-0. Back-to-back doubles on consecutive pitches. And the Nationals with 3 runs home here in the third inning.
Finnegan toes the rubber, third base side of the slab. He's coming set now as Albies leads off second with 2 out. Here's the kick and the 2-2 pitch. Swung on and missed. He struck him out, and a curly W's in the books. Save number 15 for Kyle Finnegan. The Nationals on the field to celebrate a victory. They take 3 of 4 from the Braves in Atlanta. The final score, the Nationals 3, the Braves 1.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Friday, May 31st, 2024. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi Podcast. Mark Zuckerman is off for this installment of the podcast, but I am pleased to be joined by the boss of the podcast, Tim Shovers, and I am pleased to say that the Nationals just won 3 of 4 games at the Atlanta Braves. As we know, the Nats in recent seasons have not done so well in games against division opponents. The Nats in the 2023 regular season went just 19-33 against National League East opponents. The Nats in the 2022 regular season went a woeful 17-59 against NL East opponents. But the Nats now in this regular season are 8-6 against National League East opponents. And the Nats just won 3 of 4 games at the team that has won the NL East in each of the last 6 seasons, the Braves. Thursday night, a 3-1 win at the Braves to win the series 3-1. The Nats for this regular season overall now are 26-29. This installment of the Nats Chat Podcast is brought to us by the great Mason Kalfas and his team of 10 legal recruiters at Zenith Legal in Washington, D.C. Check out Mason's website today, zenithlegal.com, or call or text Mason anytime, 202-486-3535. Tim, that was a very nice series that the Nats just had at the Braves.
That is what you call some really good pitching, Al. Good pitching all week long in Atlanta. The Nats caught a break in the series finale on Thursday evening facing Ray Kerr, who the Braves would not prefer to have as a starting pitcher currently, but have to due to recent injuries and such. The Nationals took advantage of not having to face Chris Sale, and here they are. They went 3 out of 4 games, and Trevor Williams keeps it going. We're going to head to June, and, you know, maybe we should stop asking when are the wheels going to fall off, and maybe this is who Trevor Williams is. Obviously, long season to go.
I hope this is who he is. June is when the wheels fell off last season, so to me, he's got to get through June in one piece, and if he does, then I think you can start to have that conversation of, hey, maybe, just maybe, this is a really good season that Trevor Williams is having. Look, he is having a really good season. It's just a question of, is it going to continue? But he has been superb. There's no doubt about that. And the Nats pitching lately has been superb. And the Nats on Thursday night got more really good pitching. You cannot overstate how well the Nats are pitching right now. You start with Trevor Williams. He on Thursday night was good again. 1 run in 5 2/3 innings. He gave up just 4 hits, which were a triple, a double, and 2 singles. He issued 2 walks. He recorded 4 strikeouts. He threw 95 pitches, 56 strikes versus 39 balls. His peripherals were not anything special, but he over 5 2/3 innings allowed just 6 base runners and 1 run. Ain't nothing wrong with those numbers, and that is the kind of work that Trevor Williams has been doing this season. Williams now, for this regular season, 11 starts, ERA of 2.22, a whip of 1.08. Trevor Williams came into Thursday number 1 among all Nats pitchers in wins above replacement per Baseball Reference for this regular season, 1.6. And that WAR is only going to go up when the new WAR calculation comes out on Friday morning. And Nats starting pitchers continue to roll. Nats starting pitchers now over the team's last 8 games, ERA of 2.27 and 56 strikeouts versus 7 walks. There is nothing about the Nats this season that has been better than their starting pitching. And the peak of that starting pitching is what we are seeing lately, nearly 2 full times through the rotation now, ERA at 2.27 in terms of the last 8 games now for the Nats.
To the point where you're expecting a good outing each day from the Nationals. It would be a surprise if they were to give up 8 runs. The Trevor Williams thing, the beauty about it is that there is a path in this world of 5 and dive being acceptable for your average starter. Well, okay, Trevor Williams, can you just be basically a 5 and dive guy? And you've said how the stigma from that is gone, and now he's doing that. And when you get that and don't have a blow-up game every 5 days, man, does it change the equation very quickly for your team.
There's no question about that. The days of, a starting pitcher going 250 innings in a regular season, those days are done. The days of going 220 innings may well be done. In a lot of ways, like 180 is the new 200, 160 is the new 180. Like there are all kinds of adjustments that you have to make in your mind now in terms of starting pitcher workload. Trevor Williams, over his 11 starts, has totaled a mere 56 2/3 innings. That's not all that much, right? But that's okay. Like no one's asking him to be this workhorse for the Nationals. Just go out there and do what is asked of you. 5 innings, 80 pitches, 2 runs or less. Everyone will embrace that with open arms, and Williams has provided that. And you cannot say enough about the improvement of Williams from last season. He ended up being horrible over the final 4 months of last season. He has been anything but that so far this season. I give him a lot of credit. I give the pitching coach, Jim Hickey, a lot of credit. I give the pitching strategist, Sean Doolittle, a lot of credit. The Nats have done really good work here in, at least so far, fixing Trevor Williams. There has been so little fixing of Nats players, especially Nats pitchers in recent seasons. With Trevor Williams, there is a fixing that has taken place. Now, you could argue, well, him getting broken last season happened on the Nats' watch, and that is true, but that the Nats have gotten this guy on a proper path, that he himself has gotten himself on a proper path, has been so good to see. And then the Nats bullpen. There have been some bad outings here and there, but by and large, how are you anything but supremely pleased with what this bullpen is doing? And what we had on Thursday night was another good outing from Nats relievers. 4 Nats relievers combined for 3 1/3 scoreless innings, and each of the 4 relievers was effective. Dylan Floro, he faced 3 batters and got 3 outs, including generating 2 swinging strikeouts. Floro came into the game in the bottom of the 6th with a runner on first, 2 outs, and the Nats up 3-1, and he generated a 4-pitch swinging strikeout of the Braves' number 6 batter, Orlando Arcia. Robert Garcia faced 1 batter and got 1 out. Hunter Harvey tossed a scoreless bottom of the 8th and facing the Braves' numbers 1 through 4 batters. He did give up a 2-out ground rule double by Marcell Ozuna to left field, but then generated a 3-pitch swinging strikeout of Matt Olson. It is almost comical. Davey Martinez continues to deploy Harvey to face the most difficult portions of opposing teams' lineups, and Harvey continues to come through. There is no Nats reliever who is being tested more than Hunter Harvey this season in terms of opposing batters, and Harvey continues to do so well. And then Kyle Finnegan, a scoreless bottom of the 9th for the save. You talked about having confidence in Nats starting pitchers right now. I think you have a similar confidence in the Nats bullpen right now.
The Nats have a good A bullpen. Just think about that. I think last year at this time we felt in a similar fashion with not as much depth, because now you have to really include 4 pitchers for the amount that this bullpen is needed. But what Dylan Floro has added to this team, just give him a little bit of rest. And then I like the way Harvey was utilized this week. 3 times in a crucial series against a division foe, but not 3 days in a row. And lastly, with Kyle Finnegan, as we're about to enter June, if I had to pick at least one guy that's going to be headed to Arlington, Texas for the All-Star game this summer for the Nationals, right now I think the favorite in the clubhouse should be Kyle Finnegan.
He definitely is a leading contender. What I think is so fun about that conversation is that you have a number of Nats players who you can talk about. Kyle Finnegan is a contender. Hunter Harvey is a contender. I think if Dylan Floro continues to pitch well, he might be a contender. I know he had that rough outing a few games ago, but his overall numbers for the season are really good. Mackenzie Gore is a contender. Trevor Williams is potentially a contender. If C.J. Abrams gets back on track offensively, rough last 2 games for him, but he could be a contender. So a lot of guys to be thinking about in terms of all-star candidates for the Nats. The Nats, for this regular season now, number 11 in the majors in overall team ERA, 3.83. The pitching has been really good. I'm going to continue to say this. The pitching is postseason caliber. The pitching is playoff caliber, what the Nats are getting right now. And, with the bullpen, so Thursday was May 30th. The trade deadline is on July 30th. Now, if the Nats are in wild card contention, and they may well be, it's going to be very interesting to see if the Nats are sellers or stand pat come the deadline. It's hard to envision the Nats being buyers at the deadline. I guess you never say never, but that's going to be interesting to see. But if the Nats do end up being sellers come July 30th, and they're still getting this very good bullpen work, you think about the trade chips that the Nats will have in that pen. And whether they deploy these chips is another conversation. But Kyle Finnegan, Hunter Harvey, Dylan Floro, like multiple reliever trade chips. We so many times over the years have seen the Nats have to trade for bullpen help that they could be in this position of being sellers in terms of having multiple standout relievers would be so unique. And it's the kind of thing that could maybe bring back something special. We remember what happened in 2017 when the Nats had to rebuild the bullpen on the fly, acquired multiple relievers in a singular trade with the A's, right? Got Ryan Madsen and Sean Doolittle. Imagine a contending team in need of bullpen help, desperate for bullpen help. You call up the Nats, Finnegan, Harvey, Floro. Like, there's a nice reliever package that the Nats potentially could piece together. So we got 2 months till the deadline. We'll see where the Nats are in terms of the standings at that point. But that is interesting to me with this bullpen, that it's not just the good work right now, it's what the bullpen could mean come that trade deadline in a couple of months.
Being a seller, though, in modern day doesn't mean what it used to be, because look at last year, the Nats were sellers and only pulled off 1 trade. 2 years ago, they were sellers, and they were only able to pull off 2 trades, and one of which was A-Ray Adrianza. It's hard to make deals now. Now, the guys you're talking about, the bullpen arms, definitely there'll be some willing GMs on the other end of that phone in late July. But that would be very interesting that in a year where they're flirting with 500 in the summer, that's the year where they pull off multiple trades. That'd be a little bit backwards there, formula-wise.
It would feel odd. I'm sure there are people who would not like it. I think if you're a real militant when it comes to your rebuild, that is what you do. You stick to your process. But we'll see. It's going to depend on where the Nats are from a standing standpoint. It'll depend on what the trade market is. But, I would argue in recent years when the Nats were sellers, their pieces, save for Juan Soto, were not particularly attractive. The Nats are better enough this season and have guys doing well enough to where the Nats are going to have, if things continue the way they are, some attractive pieces. And I think that could make for some compelling conversation come that deadline. But again, we're 2 months away. Who the heck knows where things may be at? With the new wild card setup, it's hard not to be in wild card contention come the trade deadline anymore. Like, if you're anywhere near 500, you're basically in wild card contention these days. Hey, are you a law firm partner or associate looking for an upgrade from AAA to the majors. Don't be stuck in Rochester like James Wood. Step up to the big leagues by getting the best legal recruiter in D.C. on your team, Mason Kalfis and his team of 10 legal recruiters at Zenith Legal in Washington, D.C. Many lawyers think that they are stuck at firms with inferior resources, management, or compensation, but it is still an active lateral market with top firms looking to poach talent from competitors. And unlike a prospect's move up to the majors, you will find the new firm can make your practice easier. Better resources, better cross-selling opportunities, and better branding to win business from prospective clients. Don't be stuck in Fredericksburg when you are a Washington, D.C. level talent in litigation, regulatory, or corporate legal practices. Mason Kalfis will discuss your practice and clients with you and help you find a better platform to increase your compensation and career trajectory. He has placed partners in over half of the AmLaw 100 law firms, and his candidates rave about the excellent service and their new jobs. Mason also is well known for working with senior government lawyers at the DOJ, SEC, and White House to find positions in top Washington, D.C. law firms. Check out his website today, zenithlegal.com, or call or text him anytime, 202-486-3535. Go Nats!
PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. The finals mean more on PrizePicks, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars that you won't find anywhere else. And when the finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on PrizePicks because women's basketball is just getting started. With young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves, alongside greats like Brianna Stewart and Asia Wilson, you could win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. This week on PrizePicks, I'm looking at the basketball board and selecting Jaylen Brown for more than 25 points, Tyrese Halliburton for more than 10 assists, and Jason Tatum for more than 10 rebounds. Download the app today and use code BLUEWIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code BLUEWIRE on the PrizePicks app for that first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less, it's that easy.
It was 70 and 50 last time, and Cruz belts that one deep into left field. Track wall, goodbye. So just like that, new pitcher in Harrisburg's on the board, and it's Dylan Cruz with a solo homer that makes it a 7-1 game in the 7th.
Here's your minor league update for the games played on Thursday. Kate Cavalli started for Wilmington in high A, 2 2/3 innings pitched, allowed 2 runs, struck out 5, issued 3 walks. Up to Double A, Dylan Cruz hit a home run, his 4th of the season, and hitting behind him, Brady House, 1 for 4, hitting .247 on the season. House's OPS, 776. Now back to the show.
1 ball, 2 strikes. Kerr to Meneses. It's on the way. Swinging, it's poked on the ground. It's fair inside the first baseline and down the line will clear the bases. Young scores. Thomas scores. Meneses to second. The throw is cut off, and the Nationals lead 2-0.
The Nats offense in this 3-1 win at the Braves on Thursday night. Not great, but good enough. The Nats scored just 3 runs, totaled 8 hits, which were 3 doubles and 5 singles. The Nats did work 3 walks. The Nats did strike out 10 times, went just 2 for 12 with runners in scoring position. But the Nats also went 4 for 5 on stolen bases. Your Nationals running game was impactful for a second consecutive game. The running game had kind of calmed down in recent weeks, but the last 2 games, big-time impact here. All 3 of the Nats' runs came in the top of the 3rd, and the 3 runs came on doubles on consecutive pitches. Joey Meneses, he in the Nats' 3-run 3rd, a 2-out opposite field 2-run double into foul territory in right field on a 1-2 pitch for a 2-0 lead. Meneses on Thursday night as the Nats starting first baseman and number 3 batter, 2 for 4 with a 2-run double and a single. He in the top of the 7th had a 2-out first pitch single into left field. And then Jesse Winker in the Nats' 3-run 3rd, a 2-out first pitch opposite field RBI double off the left field wall for a 3-0 Nats lead. And he had a steal of second base. Winker on Thursday night as the Nats starting designated hitter and number 4 batter, 1 for 4 with the RBI double. There wasn't a ton happening with the offense, but on back-to-back pitches, the Nats got all of the runs that the team needed in this game.
Yeah, credit to Joey Meneses. We've been hard on him this season on the podcast. 5 hits this week in Atlanta. He's pulling his average up. having a much better May than he did in April. And he made it so that, for instance, they had to let go of an outfield the other day to bring up Lane Thomas, and it was very clear it was Robles, and Meneses was far away from that conversation. I thought the Nats offense would have a bigger night because they were facing Ray Kerr, and he didn't even last 4 innings. So the fact that 3 runs were enough on a game like this shows you that the pitching really showed up when it needed to on Thursday night.
The pitching has carried this team lately. There are no two ways about it. We did have another impactful game for Lane Thomas on Thursday night. Man, has he hit the ground running. It was on Monday afternoon that the Nats reinstated Thomas from the 10-day injured list. He had been on that since April 24th due to the sprained left MCL. Thomas on Thursday night as the Nats starting right fielder and number 2 batter, 1 for 4 with a single and a walk. And he went 2 for 2 on stolen bases. Thomas in the top of the first, a 1-out opposite field single to right field on a 1-2 pitch. And he on the very next pitch had to steal a second base, and Thomas in the Nats 3-run third drew a 2-out 4-pitch walk, and he had a steal of second base. The Nats on Thursday night did have Nick Senzel. Good to see that. He and the Nats a 7-2 win at the Braves on Wednesday night. Left the game due to having hurt his right knee. But Senzel on Thursday night was a starter and played well. He was the Nats starting third baseman and number 6 batter. 2 for 3 with a double, a single, and a walk. He did get thrown out in an attempted steal of second base. Top of the second, a 1-out opposite field single to right field, but he then was thrown out in the attempted steal of second base for the 3rd out. But Senzel in the top of the 6th, leadoff first pitch double down the third base line, and Senzel in the top of the 8th drew a 1-out walk. And I mentioned the speed. What we saw on Thursday night from Jacob Young was like a clinic on what high-level speed can mean. So Young in this game as an Nats starting center fielder and number 9 batter, 2 for 3 with 2 singles and a hit by pitch. As yes, he got hit by a pitch for a second consecutive game. This hit by pitch not nearly as scary as the hit by pitch on Wednesday night. Young in the Nats 3-run third drew a 1-out hit by pitch on an 0-2 pitch, and he had a steal of third base. Young in the top of the 4th, a 1-out first pitch bunt single on a great bunt in front of home plate, and the bunt and Young's speed prompted a throwing error by Brave starting pitcher Ray Kerr, advancing Young to second and Eddie Rosario to third. And then Young in the top of the 9th, a 1-out opposite field single to right field, and he, while at first, prompted a throwing error by Braves reliever Jimmy Herget on a pickoff attempt. So we saw the speed of Jacob Young create all kinds of havoc in this game. Is there a more exciting Nats player to watch this season than Jacob Young? I guess when C.J. Abrams was really going well, he was quite exciting to watch. But as things stand, at least right now, Jacob Young, especially on the base paths, means excitement.
To me, the answer is yes. I love watching him on the bases. That's what I miss the most out of Trey Turner, is not the other stuff, not the hitting. It's watching him run the bases. I'm encouraged from Lane Thomas stealing multiple bases on Thursday night, mixed with Jacob Young getting in on the running act, because that has gone away a little bit recently, and I'm hoping that with the return of Thomas into the lineup, that could add some more base stealing to the equation. And, oh, by the way, Jesse Winker has 10 stolen bases before we hit June 1st on the calendar. Absolutely did not see that one coming. So, a very encouraging evening, and if you like Jacob Young, this is high tide.
Jacob Young is one of the reasons Victor Robles got designated for assignment. We talked about that earlier this week, but Robles getting DFA'd wasn't just about him. It also was about Jacob Young. And, you know, there's irony there because it was on April 4th that the Nats put Victor Robles on the 10-day injured list with a left hamstring strain, and the corresponding roster move was the Nats recalling Young from AAA Rochester, and Young basically has not looked back since. Now, he hasn't hit for much power, that is true, but Young for this regular season at the major league level has an on-base percentage of .338. That is good. 17 for 20 on stolen bases. That is good. And his defense has been great. Jacob Young came into Thursday number 1 among all Nats players in defensive wins above replacement per Baseball Reference for this regular season, 0.6. If you go by defensive WAR, the Nats' best player this season has not been Abrams. And Abrams has been good defensively at shortstop, but the Nats' best player this season per defensive WAR has actually been Jacob Young. He's actually doing the thing that Robles used to do, which is play a really good center field. So a salute to Jacob Young. And a salute to the Nats. I mean, I mentioned this in the opening. In recent years, the Nats have gotten worked in these games against National League East opponents. There's still a ways to go this season. We get that. And there still are many more games to come against NL East opponents because the Nats have not played many NL East opponents so far this season. And the Nats did get swept against the Phillies recently, so that did happen. But 8-6 against the NL East so far. That is marked improvement in terms of what has been the case for the Nats against division opponents these last 2 years.
Game changer. They were uncompetitive against every single team in the division for an extended period of time, including somehow, some way, the Miami Marlins in that. Every time they had a division series, you just assumed they were going to get swept. How many times in a row did the Phillies beat them? I mean, they couldn't do anything. And it seemed like every time they would go to Atlanta, there would be at least one, if not two, complete routes. That didn't happen this week. Basically the opposite of that, and that's win the series. So I'm with you, Al. The play against the division, so encouraging.
Hey guys, Al Galdi here to tell you about the latest offer from Window Nation for listeners of the Nats Chat podcast. The time has come. The time for Window Nation's semi-annual sale. 50% off all window styles plus 0% interest for 5 years and an additional bonus if you schedule an appointment this week. This runs through the end of the month. You know, many so-called wood or composite windows are actually made from waste materials like wood fibers and cannot beat the efficiency of Window Nation's insulated vinyl windows. Window Nation's vinyl windows can do everything that you need and at a fraction of the cost of wood or composite windows. You see, nobody does windows like Window Nation does. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. Again, that deal, the semi-annual Window Nation sale. 50% off all window styles plus 0% interest for 5 years and an additional bonus if you schedule an appointment this week. 866-90NATION or windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION or windownation.com. And make sure that you tell Window Nation that Al Galdi from the Nats Chat podcast sent you.
From grown-worthy dad jokes to patching up skinned knees, your dad is one of a kind. This Father's Day, give him a gift that is guaranteed to take him to his happy place. Omaha Steaks. Order mouth-watering gift packages starting at just $89 when you go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code natschat at checkout. Each package is backed by their unconditional money-back guarantee. Show your dad the love he deserves with a gift as unforgettable as he is. Visit omahasteaks.com, promo code natschat at checkout.
It's been awesome. You know, we got timely hit today by Joey Meneses, so it's a big win for us. We come out of here with three wins out of 4 games. That's pretty good.
You can always email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We get a lot of good thoughts. We get a lot of good questions. We got this from Andrew Red as we were just talking about Jacob Young. Jacob Young's scary near miss with the hit by pitch got me thinking, with Victor Robles out, likely permanently, who would play center field every day if Jacob Young got injured? I know that Eddie Rosario has played there a little bit, but he certainly wouldn't be the answer if a center fielder was needed for a few weeks. Lane Thomas has a good bit of time in center field, but he certainly seems to be more comfortable and is a better fit in right. Thank you for the email, Andrew. That's actually a really good question. And the answer is there isn't an obvious answer for center field right now if Jacob Young gets injured. Obviously, long-term, Dylan Cruz projects to be the center fielder, but he may not be summoned to the majors anytime soon. Certainly not going to be happening imminently, maybe later this season, but that's a maybe at this point. James Wood can play center field, but obviously he has not yet been promoted to the majors. You could, figure out a timeshare with the likes of Thomas and Rosario. I think, though, if Young got hurt, what you probably would see would be Alex Call time, and they would bring Call back up to the majors and just kind of piecemeal center field until the longer-term answers are ready for Major League play. But that's a good point by Andrew. There isn't an obvious center fielder on the team at the Major League level if Jacob Young were to go down for any length of time.
There is not, and I think you nailed it. If it had to be at that moment, day of, it'd be Thomas or Rosario. But if it were a trip to the IL, then definitely Alex Call would be making his usual shuttle between Rochester and Washington, D.C.
Email from Patrick on the great pitching by the Nats. For many fans like me, the Nats' run of pitching excellence has been an unexpected surprise. What do you think is the cause of this pitching windfall? To what extent have Jim Hickey, Sean Doolittle, the development team of the minors, or the players themselves contributed to this development? Whom do we thank? Thank you for the email, Patrick. And the correct answer, and it's not a particularly exciting answer, but the correct answer is everything that was listed there by Patrick. I don't think you can single out one person or factor when it comes to the improved starting pitching. Obviously, you have to give the pitchers themselves credit because they're putting in the work. I think Sean Doolittle is making an impact. You talk to people on and off the record, the Doolittle factor is real, and he is one of the things that clearly is different from last season to this season. So when you talk about someone like Trevor Williams being so much better, Jake Irvin demonstrating so much improvement, Doolittle is a difference, right? He's one of the differences in the environment for the Nats this season. So I think that is true. But I do think that Jim Hickey deserves credit. I know that people at times are hard on Hickey. Jim Hickey as a pitching coach actually has a good track record. He was with the Rays for years. He's a guy who Davey Martinez knows well. Hickey's a guy who Joe Madden, who I have a lot of respect for, certainly trusted for many years. And, when we talk about the Nats pitching being better, remember, last season, we saw Josiah Gray take a big step forward. I think Jim Hickey was a part of that. We saw Jake Irvin be surprisingly solid. I think Jim Hickey was a part of that. We saw Mackenzie Gore demonstrate improvement last season. Hickey was a part of that. So I think the Nats and Hickey have a guy who is pretty good, maybe even very good as a pitching coach. It's hard to assess these things, but I do think that Hickey gets at least some of the credit for this great pitching that we're seeing from the Nats right now.
Hickey gets credit, Doolittle gets credit, everything gets credit, all the things that you said. Also, we're just in a season of dominant pitching overall. That's the vibe right now in Major League Baseball. Pitching has been on a pitch-to-pitch basis. I feel like pitching is more dominant than it's ever been because now there are just a lot of really good relief pitchers, not like it used to be when there were fewer guys. And then when you have better bullpens, that leads to better starting staffs who, it all works together, all part of the ecosystem of baseball.
I'll say this about Hickey, too. A lot of time with the Rays, you go back even further than that. If you remember when the Houston Astros were very good, 2004, 2005, their pitching coach at the time was Jim Hickey. So he was doing good work with the likes of, Roy Oswalt and Roger Clemens. And yes, Roger may have had some help from some other entities, but still, Jim Hickey was with those very good Astros teams in 04 and 05. And yeah, you are correct. This is a down offensive environment in Major League Baseball right now. But I think that's the thing. Even in comparison to other teams in this depressed run-scoring environment, the Nats still have impressive pitching numbers. So the pitching has, in fact, been good, and we certainly hope that it does continue. We have a special item that we're going to play for you coming up shortly. We do want to tell you that this installment of the Nats Chat podcast has been brought to us by Mason Kalfas and his team of 10 legal recruiters at Zenith Legal in Washington, D.C. Check out Mason's website today, zenithlegal.com, or call or text Mason anytime, 202-486-3535. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website as well, natschatpodcast.com. If you are interested in advertising on the podcast, we'd love to have you on board, see what we can do for you. You can hit up Tim at that aforementioned email address, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. So for Tim Shovers, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat podcast. And we're going to leave you with something very special right now. So we, on the last installment of the podcast, talked about the incorporation of Negro League statistics now into the official MLB historical statistical database. One of the many repercussions of this is Josh Gibson, the legendary player for the Homestead Grays, a legend in Washington, D.C. baseball, now being MLB's all-time leader in career regular season OPS slugging percentage and batting average. Josh Gibson is a legend in baseball for a variety of reasons. He had a fascinating career. He had a fascinating life. We, 3 years ago, so this is all the way back in June 2021, had on as a guest on the podcast, Bob Kendrick. Bob Kendrick is the president of the Negro Leagues Museum, and he is excellent at talking about Negro Leagues baseball. He has a command of it like few people on the planet. And this was part of our conversation with Bob Kendrick talking about the great Josh Gibson. So Josh Gibson is such an interesting guy to read about, to talk about. One of the more fascinating things with his career is the home run total. The home run total, what it is, has been a big thing for years. As best as we can tell, what is Josh Gibson's career home run total?
It is so difficult to really quantify because it all depends on which games you count. The numbers that are being kind of forecasted as we look at the epic decision that Major League Baseball made to integrate the Negro Leagues statistics into the annals of baseball history will show a diminished number of home runs for Josh Gibson. It won't be the mythical-like numbers that we believe occurred. It just occurred against all levels of competition, including major leaguers. But the game totals that you'll see will be specifically attached to league games. And they just didn't play that many league games. So if we see 250 home runs from Josh Gibson in his league play, someone's going to say, well, that doesn't appear to be Babe Ruth-like. So now you got to delve into the numbers a little bit deeper and start to think about how many at-bats. What would this equate to over a 162-game season? And then you probably will get a more representable number. But for me, I believe every home run the man hit should count. I don't care who they were against because it was not their choice, fellas, to play in the Negro Leagues. They had to play in the Negro League. Yeah, the major leagues wouldn't allow them in. So they played however they could, whenever they could. And to me, it doesn't diminish the real power of Josh Gibson. As I described it, it's almost mythical-like. But as I tell people all the time, the power was very real. And to get an even greater quantitative look at Gibson, just look at what the numbers he put up playing everywhere around this globe. Because there, the stats were really well kept. And when you start looking at what he did in Venezuela, in Puerto Rico, in Cuba, in Mexico, those numbers will tell you that we're talking about one of the most prolific, not power hitters, one of the most prolific hitters this game has ever seen. And his name was Joshua Gibson.